Who's a random stranger you'll never forget? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. Isaac the businessman. He was from some Middle Eastern country and dressed to kill with a perfect suit and tie and a shiny briefcase. Clean shaven and not a hair out of place. He was on his way to a business meeting when he saw me draw a statue in an alley while my friend watched. We were like 17 or 18 years old. He told me he wanted me to draw him and he would pay me. He took my friend and me to a cafe where he bought us a Coke each while he had a beer. Then I started drawing him while my friend basically began interviewing him. He talked about his life, how he lived with his wife in London and how he was always traveling for business. How he was born in Iraq and what his life philosophy was. He talked a lot about love and how important it is to have a strong and healthy love in your life, and that even if you are passionate at your job, you need to make time for family. He paid me for the drawing and told me he'd bring it home to his wife. I saved the banknote he gave me in one of my notebooks for years and promised myself I would only use it if there was a good reason for it. Ended up using it on pizza with a guy I had started hanging out with. That guy has now been my boyfriend for 11 years, so I think it was okay to sacrifice the money on him. As it turns out, we are both very hard-working people, but we still find time to be there for each other, which has made our relationship strong. I think that pizza was a good investment. Isaac the businessman would have been proud. Hope he's still happy with his wife out there. I went to a water park when I was like 12, 13. There was this river you could swim in that went in a circle, with a bridge over it. I was about to pass under the bridge, when I saw a girl standing there, smiling and waving at me. I smiled back, and fell in love instantly. LOL. Next time I passed, she was still there. She stood there a few more rounds, but alas, she was gone the next. I was an awkward 12, 13-year-old kid who in no way had the balls to talk to a girl that I didn't know. Saw her in the parking lot as we were leaving, but she didn't see me. I touched the car window with my hand and whispered goodbye like some cringy scene from a crappy movie. But I'll never forget her, though. I have a somewhat similar one. I was 11 and with my family on a long distance driving vacation, staying the night at a motel in Missouri that had an outdoor pool. There was this girl about my age who drifted into the deep end and started screaming that she couldn't swim, so I swam over and pushed her to the ladder. No lifeguard on duty. Soon a pattern developed. Every so often she'd drift out there again and I would keep either pushing or pulling her to the ladder. Probably happened 5 or 6 times before my parents called my sister and I in for the night. By then I had pretty much figured out that this girl had been doing this on purpose, and I began to develop a crush on her. I saw her sitting with her family the next morning at the continental breakfast and I smiled at her, and she completely ignored me. Oh well. This one. Here. Story of my life. Also had a similar thing. We're camping at McConomy Lake, Nebraska. I was around 14, 15. Me and this boy somehow started to interact with one another near the water. I think he was catching fish or some mini crab or whatever and I just tagged along. His mum fed me a sandwich and we just sat together. Eventually I went back to my camp and never saw him again. I just knew that he said he lived in Lakewood, Company. But I don't remember his name. He still comes up in my mind once in a while. Hope he's doing okay. One day I was walking home from elementary school and a guy was working one house's garden. He called me out in a Jamaican accent for slouching, so after a second of being surprised I laughed, stood up straighter and kept going. Then like a month later after I'd forgotten the whole thing I noticed he was back and quickly fixed my posture. When he saw me he yelled, "See, now you walk like a star." Some woman I met on the train on the way to Newark Airport. We both had luggage so talked to each other. I was broke, like dead broke and late for my flight back to college because I was young and dumb and spent all my money partying. She paid for my tram ride and my rebooking fee. I missed the flights and had to wait for the next one. Then on top of it got me some food as we were in the same terminal. I told her I would happily pay her back once I got back, and she refused and just had me promise I would graduate. She was so sweet. Did you graduate? Yep. Super senior did in 5 years. I don't know if you were planning on graduating, you know how life goes. But that's the sort of random act of kindness that would make you feel something special and continue through the hardships. The random dude at the gas station who ran up to me and screamed in my face that peanut butter is answer then quickly ran away. I find myself thinking about me quite a bit honestly. My siblings, my mother and I were driving somewhere, and we came up to a red light. Off to our right on the sidewalk were two people beating the shit out of this kid with an aluminum bat. My mother parked the car in the middle of the street, got out and shouted at the two aggressors while making motions to reach into her purse for a gun. Aggressors booked it, and the kid got into our car after my mother offered him a ride home. The thing is, my mother is like 5 feet 3 inches, and had no weapons whatsoever that day. She made a bluff and the two assholes didn't stick around to find out what she was going to get. The kid, however, bloody and completely fricked up, was so genuinely thankful and appreciative of what my mother had done for him that it stands out in my mind to this day. He just couldn't believe that someone had come to his rescue. Your mum is a hero. She sounds so rad. Big black guy asking for spare change in front of a grocery store. I usually don't carry cash, so I apologized and kept walking. Well, at least can I give you a big ol' hug? You look like a guy that gives good hugs. So, we hugged it out. It was such an unexpected act of humanity and it really made my day. Might wanna check your pockets yo. My daughter and I were at Hollywood Studios in Orlando. We met an eclectic older couple in the fast pass line for Tower of Terror who chatted us up. Fast forward, the ride is over and we run into them again in the gift shop. They asked if we had ridden several rides with notoriously long lines at the park. We said no. They proceed to fast pass us to the front of every one of the lines at the park. I asked them several times how they were doing this. They wouldn't say anything and would smile to each other. Turned out the gentleman was a retired engineer for Disney and had helped build the Hollywood Studios park, and had a special pass that allows him to the front of the lines. They truly made that day 1000x better. Shout out to Bill and Tammy from Tampa for hooking us up. Summer I graduated high school. My best friend and I got to go to New England for a couple of weeks. We were running down the jetty talking about how memorable the whole experience was, overall. No more than had we said that some guy shoved a fishing pole into my arm and screams, "Hey, hold this will ya," and jumps straight into the water. A few seconds later he resurfaces and climbs back up the rocks with a decent sized fish in his hand. He looks totally proud of himself and says, "Man, I've had great luck today." No sooner than saying the word today the fish flopped out of his arms, smacking him in the face with its tail and plop right back into the water. Shocked, the dude is totally silent for a few moments before he utters, I. Trying not to burst into laughter at this pool guy, I hand over his pole and say, "Well, I think this is yours." We didn't make it 10 feet before we were howling with laughter. A gay Indian guy who was on the same 36-hour coach journey as myself, 10 years old, and my mother, traveling from England to Spain in the 1980s. He had a flamenco dance class going in Spain and was returning there. He was dressed in a flamboyant manner, imagine Andalusian Elvis, complete with sequined silk scarf, had outlandish mannerisms, told brilliant stories, danced by the side of the road with great talent making everyone smile, and, because my mother was alone with me, wouldn't let us out of his sight even at the end of our journey, where we arrived at night in a seedy coach station, and he stayed with us until my uncle arrived to collect us. I never forgot him. He didn't have much. We shared our food with him when we realized he didn't have his own, but he was a constant ray of sunshine and optimism. One time I was crossing the street on a sunny December day. I had been depressed for a long time at this point, but that day I actually put on clothes that were semi-cute, leggings with boots, a scarf, and a plaid button-up. And this guy was crossing the street opposite of me. He made and held eye contact, and then he told me I look so beautiful today. And it was just the thing I needed that day. Random compliment with no strings attached. My ex left our baby and me in a city where I knew nobody and I was 600 miles from home. He cut off my phone, I needed to get to the ATM immediately to withdraw whatever money I could before he did, and I needed to get a new phone so I could call my family and tell them I was coming home. I got the baby into the car and realized I left my wallet in our second floor apartment. I was in pieces already from him leaving and just overwhelmed with everything. The weather was nasty and snowy and it's hard getting a baby up and down stairs when I was in a hurry. There was a woman playing outside with her kids. I was almost in tears and asked her if she could please keep an eye on my baby in the car for a minute so I could go get my wallet. Not my smartest decision, but she gave off a good vibe. She said yes, of course, and stood next to my car so she could see the baby through the window. I got my wallet and came back downstairs and was able to get to the ATM. It was such a small thing, but I will never forget her. It was the hardest time of my life and I was able to trust a stranger with the most precious thing I had. She made my life just a tiny bit easier when I was about to break. One of my favorite things to do when high-fiving someone is to purposefully miss and then follow through to achieve a low five. Most of the time I have to tell people to follow through, but there was one time that I did it to someone I didn't know, and without me needing to say anything, they followed through, smooth as butter. It was magical.